If you ever want to know what betrayal sounds like, it's the silence that falls across a dinner table when the people judging you realize they've been dining with the wrong fool. That silence, it could slice through bone. And that night, it cut straight through me. I was the fool. Or at least that's what they thought. A washed-up electrician in a thrift store jacket. The poor polite father they could pity dismiss and buy off with a few $100 a month. But what they didn't know, what none of them could have imagined, was that I was the one holding the strings. And by the end of that dinner, every secret they'd buried was being wide open on the table. My name's Scott, and this is the night I decided to act poor, just to see who they really were. I didn't expect the truth to hit that hard. If you're watching this, hit like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're hearing my story from. I want to know, what would you have done if you were me? Because trust me, what came next changed everything. I am 60 years old, and for most of my life, I wired houses for other people's dreams. 40 years crawling through attics, sweating in Texas summers, fixing what other folks broke. I built a living one circuit at a time. Now I'm retired early, as folks like to call it, though. Retirement feels more like standing still in a world that keeps moving. I live just outside Dallas, in a neighborhood that smells of fresh-cut grass and barbecues on Sundays. My house is small, but I built half of it myself, after the tornado of '03. Every brick reminds me that my hands once had purpose. Every creak in the floor reminds me I'm still here. It's been 6 years since Linda, my wife, passed away. She was my anchor, my calm in the storm. Cancer took her slow and cruel, like a thief that wanted to watch me break piece by piece. After she died, I stopped looking for happiness. I started looking for quiet. Most mornings, I sit at the kitchen table with a cup of black coffee, watching the sunlight hit the same crack in the wall. The silence is thick, but it's honest. The only sound that ever breaks it is the hum of my old Ford Ranger when I take it out for groceries or church. That truck's been with me longer than some friends. She coughs when I start her, but she always runs. Just like me. To anyone watching from the outside, I look like what they call a simple man. Old boots, worn jeans, shirts that know hard work. And I'm fine with that. Because when people think you are simple, they show you their true selves without even realizing it. The truth, though, I'm not half as poor as I look. Over the years, I saved every extra dollar I could, fixed up old houses, rented them out, reinvested. Quietly, carefully. Now I own 24 properties across Texas. Nothing fancy, just steady income. All of it hidden behind something called the Sterling Creek Trust, a name I picked because it sounded like the kind of place Linda always wanted to retire to. I even hold shares in a logistics company down near Houston. I could stop working 10 times over if I wanted to. But money was never the goal. Freedom was. That's something you don't brag about in this world. Because the second people know you've got it, they start wanting a piece of it. Which brings me to tonight. My daughter Jenna is 32 now. She's smart, kind, stubborn. She gets that from her mother. A few months ago, she married Tyler Langford, a decent man, if a little too polished for his own good. The Langfords are what you'd call old money, with new egos. The father, Dr. Pierce Langford, is a cosmetic surgeon, the kind of man who charges more for a facelift than I ever made in a month. His wife, Meredith, runs charity galas that look more like fashion shows. They smile wide, talk soft, and calculate every move like chess players. They've invited me to dinner tonight. Just a small family gathering, Jenna said. But I can already hear the tone in her voice, the one that says she's hoping I don't embarrass her. The restaurant's one of those Michelin-starred places in uptown Dallas, where the menu doesn't list prices and the waiters whisper like they're guarding secrets. They don't know that I already plan to play a part tonight. The role of the poor but kind father. No fancy suit, no expensive watch, just an honest smile and a jar of homemade peach preserves, Linda's recipe wrapped in a piece of brown paper. I want to see how they treat me when they think I've got nothing to offer. Because a man learns a lot from silence, but even more from condescension. What they don't know, what nobody knows, is that I've got a few secrets of my own. For one, I'm not as healthy as I look. 6 months ago, the doctor told me I've got early-stage prostate cancer. Caught it early. Treatable. Manageable. But I didn't tell Jenna. I couldn't. She's been through enough. Sometimes when I take my pills, I catch my reflection in the bathroom mirror. The lines around my eyes, the way my shoulders droop a little lower each year. I look like a man, half tired of fighting, half afraid to stop. But not tonight. Tonight, I have a purpose. As the sun starts to sink, I pull out my best shirt, still faded at the collar, but clean, and button it all the way up. I polish my boots with a rag that used to be one of Linda's old shirts. For good luck, I slip her wedding ring into my breast pocket. It's a habit I've kept since the day she left. Just as I'm tightening my belt, my phone buzzes. It's a message from Jenna. Dad, please. Tonight, don't make me look bad. Just be yourself, okay? Be myself. Those two words cut deeper than she'll ever know. Because somewhere along the way, she forgot who I really am. I used to be the man who fixed her science projects at 2 a.m., who held her when she was sick, who worked double shifts so she could go to college debt-free. Now I'm just the old man she worries won't fit in with her new life. I stare at her message until my eyes blur. Then I set the phone down and look out the window. The evening lights hitting the photo on the mantel, the one of me and Linda at our wedding. She's laughing, her veil catching the wind. God, she had a laugh that could make you believe the world was still good. I whisper, guess it's time to see if our girl married into the kind of family you'd be proud of. I grab my keys, slip the preserves into a paper bag, and head for the door. The screen slams behind me, and for a moment, the sound feels final. The Ford starts on the second try. The steering wheel's worn smooth where my hands have gripped it for decades. I ease out of the driveway, watching the streetlights blink on, one by one, like a slow heartbeat, leading me toward the city. Dallas looks different at night. The skyline glows like a promise and a threat at the same time. People chasing dreams, people hiding truths, and somewhere in the middle, me. I roll down the window, let the warm wind hit my face, and think about what's coming. Maybe they'll be kind. Maybe they'll be cruel. Either way, I'll find out who they really are. And for the first time in years, I almost smile. Because I'm not going to that dinner as a man who needs their approval. I'm going as a man who already knows his worth. The truck rattles as I turn onto the highway. Downtown lights shimmer in the distance like stars I can finally reach. All right, Linda, I whisper, touching the ring in my pocket. Let's see what kind of game these people play. And with that, I drive toward Uptown, toward the night that will change everything. Dallas looks different when you drive into it at night. The further you go toward Uptown, the shinier everything gets. The cars, the people, even the sidewalks. Like money leaves a trail of light wherever it goes. My old Ford looked like a piece of yesterday, rumbling through a world that didn't remember it anymore. Every stoplight reflected off the windshield, and I caught my own face staring back, gray at the temple's lines, carved deep from years of squinting into sunlight. Linda used to call them honest wrinkles. Now they just looked like proof I'd been through some storms. By the time I pulled up to the restaurant, the air smelled of wet asphalt and perfumey. La Maison d'Étoile. That's what the gold letters above the glass doors said. French name, fancy script. Inside, I could already see men in tailored suits and women draped in silk sipping wine, that probably cost more than my truck. I parked a block away. Valet wasn't my thing. Grabbed the small paper bag from the passenger seat. Inside was the jar of homemade peach preserves, wrapped in brown paper and tied with string. Linda's recipe. Sweet, a little tart, like her sense of humor. I figured it'd make a fine hostess gift. I took one last look at myself in the side mirror. Faded blue shirt sleeves rolled just enough. Scuffed brown shoes that had seen better summers. I didn't look rich. I didn't need to. The hostess smiled politely when I stepped in, though her eyes flickered with that quick judgment only the rich ever notice. Reservation under Langford, I told her. She nodded, professional, leading me through a maze of tables where crystal glasses gleamed like tiny stars. The clinking of silverware was soft, rehearsed, almost musical. Every laugh in that room sounded like it had an audience. At the far end, behind a frosted glass door, was a private dining room. And that's where they were waiting. Meredith Langford was the first to spot me. She rose from her chair with a practiced grace smile, frozen in place. "Mr. Scott," she said, extending a hand that felt colder than the marble floor. "So wonderful to finally meet you." I shook her hand gently. "Please, just Scott. Mister makes me feel like I should be teaching Sunday school." She smiled, tight, polite already, scanning my shirt, my shoes, my gift bag. Beside her, Dr. Pierce Langford stood tall, every inch the man who thought he owned the room. Silver hair, sharp suit posture, like a man used to giving orders. He offered a nod instead of a handshake. "Scotties," he said. "Glad you could make it." Across the table, a younger man in an expensive navy suit rose with a lawyer's grin. Avery Cole. Family counsel, I'd later find out. He looked like the type who'd shake your hand and count your fingers after. And then there was Tyler, my new son-in-law. He gave me a warm smile, genuine, but you could see it in his shoulders. He was nervous, like he already knew this night could go sideways. And Jenna, my sweet girl. She looked beautiful. A little overdressed, maybe, but that's how she fits into their world, by trying too hard. When she saw me, relief and worry flashed across her face in the same heartbeat. "Dad, you made it," she said, hugging me quickly, almost like she didn't want to wrinkle her dress. "I always keep my promises," I said softly. I handed the paper bag to Meredith. "Just a small something for you," I said. "Homemade peach preserves. My wife used to make them every summer." For a moment, Meredith's eyes flickered surprise, maybe disappointment. "Oh," she said, forcing a smile. "How lovely. Thank you." She set it aside near the breadbasket, the way someone sets down a gift they already know they'll never open. Dinner began. White napkins, candlelight, waiters gliding in and out like ghosts. Every dish was art, small enough to insult a man's appetite, but pretty enough to make you forget. Wine glasses refilled themselves before I ever noticed they were empty. They talked mostly about themselves. Their house in Highland Park, the new renovation, the imported marble from Italy, the Aspen vacation home, the golf club memberships, the charity galas. I nodded politely, smiled where I should, kept my voice warm and calm. It's a skill you learn when you've spent years around power lines. Stay grounded or you'll get burned. Pierce leaned back in his chair, swirling a glass of Napa Red. "So Scott," he said, casual, but pointed. "Retired, are you?" "Yes, sir," I said. "Took early retirement a couple years back. Spent enough time under ceilings." "Ah," he said, nodding. "And you've got a pension from that, I imagine." The way he said pension made it sound like a souvenir. "Something like that," I said. Meredith smiled thinly. "Healthcare can be tricky at that age, can't it? Especially once you stop working. I do hope you've got good insurance. We worry about those things." "I manage," I said. "Been lucky so far." "Of course," she replied, dabbing her lips with a napkin. "It's just, well, you know how unpredictable life can be. One illness, One accident, and suddenly the kids are shouldering all sorts of responsibilities. She looked at Jenna when she said it, not me. The words hung in the air, sweetly spoken, full of poison. Avery leaned in, his voice smooth. It's admirable, really, what you've done. Raising a daughter alone. That must have been tough on a single income. It had its moments, I said, keeping my tone even. He smiled shark-like. Well, it paid off. Jenna's turned out wonderful. You must be proud. I am, I say steady. She's her mother's heart with my stubborn streak. That got a polite chuckle from Pierce. Tyler just stared down at his plate, silent. As the meal went on, they kept circling back to the same topic, money security planning. Meredith mentioned the trust fund for Tyler's future children. Pierce joked about retirement communities that were quite lovely if you plan ahead. Avery told a story about an elderly relative who became quite the burden after losing his savings. All of it said with smiles. All of it meant to measure me. I kept my answers short. Let them talk. You learn more by listening than by trying to win. But under the table my hands were tight around the napkin, because I knew this wasn't dinner. This was an evaluation. After dessert, some chocolate thing that looked too perfect to eat, Avery cleared his throat and reached into his leather briefcase. He pulled out a thin folder, set it on the table beside his wine. Before we wrap up, he said lightly, there's just one small matter. Some simple paperwork, purely administrative. He smiled, that lawyer smile again, calm, harmless. It's nothing complicated, Scott. Just a few financial arrangements to ensure a stable future for Jenna and Tyler. Pierce nodded approvingly. Meredith folded her hands like a queen watching her subjects obey. Avery slid the folder a few inches closer to me. Of course, he said, almost a whisper. We'd love your signature, just to put everyone's mind at ease. The room went still. Only the sound of the candle's soft crackle filled the space. I looked at the folder, then at each of their faces. Pierce confident, Meredith expectant, Avery calculating. Even Tyler looked uneasy, but he said nothing. And Jenna's eyes were pleading. Just for peace of mind, Avery repeated, smiling. I set my fork down, slow and quiet. And in that moment, something inside me shifted. This wasn't dinner anymore. This was the line. The one I'd been waiting to see. I smiled gently, leaned back in my chair and said, All right, son. Why don't you tell me exactly what it is I'm signing? The folder sat there between the candles, thin, but heavy with the kind of weight you can't measure in paper. I didn't touch it right away. You learn something working around live wires your whole life. Never grab what might shock you until you're sure it's grounded. Avery's voice was smooth, practiced. It's just a small document, Scott. Some people call it a postnup, a few legal clarifications, between Jenna and Tyler. Normal stuff. He slid the folder closer. And a brief care agreement for you. Nothing intrusive. Just to keep everything tidy. I opened it slowly. The pages smelled like fresh toner and arrogance. The first section read, Postnuptial Addendum. In the event of dissolution party, Jenna Langford waives claim to all Langford family assets. My eyes moved to the next paragraph. Family care agreement. Scott, father of Jenna, agrees not to reside with or provide financial support to Jenna or Tyler Langford, so as to mitigate financial exposure to the Langford estate. And further down in smaller print, in consideration, the Langford family shall provide a monthly stipend of $600 to Scott, conditional upon his continued independence and non-interference with Jenna and Tyler's marital estate. It wasn't just paper. It was a leash. I flipped to the last page. A separate form stapled on top. Medical power of attorney. It was written in that gentle, manipulative tone lawyers use when they want you to think they're doing you a favor. In the event of medical incapacity or cognitive decline, Decision-making authority may be delegated to the Langford Family Council to ensure continuity of care. I looked up steady. So let me see if I understand, I said slowly, my voice low enough that the candle flames barely flickered. If my daughter ever divorces, she gets nothing. And I, her father, get $600 a month as long as I stay out of her life and let your lawyer make decisions about my health when I can't. Avery smiled like a mustman explaining a parking ticket. That's one way to put it, yes. But really, it's about peace of mind, structure. Everyone knows where they stand. Everyone, I repeated, except me. Meredith laughed softly, tilting her glass. Oh, Scott, don't take it personally. This is standard in families like ours. We simply want to make sure Jenna and Tyler's future is secure. You wouldn't want your daughter burdened with, she paused delicately, unexpected responsibilities. Pierce leaned back, watching me the way a surgeon studies an X-ray. You see, Mr. Scott, we believe in planning. Financial hygiene, you might say. Hygiene, I murmured. That's a hell of a word for family. Tyler shifted in his seat, guilt flashing across his face, but he didn't say a word. Jenna stared at the tablecloth, twisting her napkin into a knot. I turned a page again, tracing the fine print with my thumb. $600 a month, I said. That's generous. Avery nodded. It's simply a courtesy. Think of it as a gesture of appreciation for your cooperation. Meredith leaned forward, smiling sweetly, every word dipped in honey and venom. Scott, you're a good man. You've worked hard all your life. I know what that looks like. But we both know what retirement can become: lonely, difficult, expensive. We just want to help. To make sure Jenna isn't worried. Her eyes hardened just for a second. Surely you don't want your daughter to carry the burden of an aging parent who struggles financially, do you? I met her gaze and held it. Her tone was polite, but her meaning was a dagger. I said nothing, just breathed. In through the nose, out through the anger. Then I leaned back, folded my arms. You know, I said quietly in Texas, a care agreement like this would fall under elder financial contracts. The state looks pretty closely at those these days, especially when there's any suggestion of coercion. Avery's smile flickered barely. I assure you, this is entirely voluntary. I'm sure I said. And if someone recorded this conversation, Texas being a one-party consent state, it'd still be legal, wouldn't it? The air changed. You could feel it. Avery's hand froze halfway to his wine. Meredith's eyebrows lifted. Pierce cleared his throat. Let's not make this adversarial, Scott. I'm not, I said softly. Just clarifying. A man my age likes to understand what he's signing before he hands over his rights, his privacy and his dignity. Meredith's smile thinned to paper. You're overthinking this. We're simply protecting everyone involved. Protecting, I repeated. Funny how that word always comes up right before someone takes something. Ambulance settled. Only the faint sound of the waiter's shoes on the marble floor broke it. Tyler finally spoke, voice small. Maybe we should let Dad, Scott, read it later. He doesn't have to decide tonight. Meredith's eyes snapped to him. One look, and he shrank back into his chair. Jenna still hadn't looked up. That hurt more than the rest. Because silence from someone you love cuts the deepest. I closed the folder slowly and placed it back in front of Avery. I'll read it carefully, I said. Line by line. Might even have someone look over it for me. Avery's tone stayed calm, but the edge crept in. Of course. Though between us, it's all standard. No need to complicate things with lawyers, right? Standard, I echoed. That's what they said about asbestos too. Pierce chuckled dryly. You have quite a sense of humor, Scott. I smiled back. Only when it's earned. Meredith took another sip of wine, her patience thinning. You're making this harder than it needs to be. Jenna's finally found stability. Don't let pride get in the way of that. It's admirable to want independence, but she trailed off, letting the sentence die in the air. Sometimes it's more noble to let go. Let go. That's what she meant. Vanish quietly. The poor father who knows his place. I looked at Jenna one last time. Her hands were trembling in her lap. I almost reached for her, but stopped myself. Instead, I looked back at Avery. You'll get my answer once I've read every word. He smiled thinly, a man who didn't like waiting. Then he raised his hand slightly, signaling the waiter. Let's not end the evening on tension, he said pleasantly. Bring the 2012 Napa Reserve, the Langford's private selection. The waiter nodded and disappeared. Avery leaned in, voice lower, intimate. Scott, off the record. We can make this simple. You sign tonight, and I'll strike the stipend clause myself. No need for monthly checks. No need for formality. Just a clean understanding between families. His tone dropped smooth as oil. Family, after all, doesn't need contracts. The cork popped from the wine bottle like a gunshot. I smiled, slow and quiet. Because right then, I knew this wasn't about family. It was about control. And they had just shown me exactly who they were. Dinner had gone from polite to poisonous, slow. Like a leak you don't notice until the floor's already soaked. The waiter refilled my glass. For the third time, his eyes darting between us, like he knew something wasn't right. The air in that private room was getting thick, the kind of thick that happens when people start saying what they really mean, but still wear a smile while they do it. Meredith dabbed the corners of her lips with a linen napkin. This lamb is divine, she said. Don't you think so, Scott? It's good, I said simply. A bit rich for my usual taste, but good. Oh, I can imagine, she replied, her smile sharp enough to cut glass. You must be more of a home-cooked meal kind of man. Comfort food. Guilty as charged, I said. She looked me up and down with an elegance that barely masked disgust. There's something charming about simplicity, she mused. Not everyone feels the need to chase luxury. Some people just prefer modesty. Her husband, Pierce, chuckled, swirling his wine. You mean discounts, dear? Meredith gave him a playful tap on the arm. Pierce, behave. He grinned. I'm only teasing. My man here looks like he knows the value of $1. That's true, I said. Some of us learned it the hard way. Of course, Pierce said, smirking. Well, don't worry. The valet won't charge extra for that old Ford outside. Tyler tried to laugh it off, but ended up choking on his drink. Jenna froze, pretending to adjust her bracelet. I took a sip of water. Calm. Still. She runs fine, I said. Gets me where I need to go. Meredith leaned in slightly, her voice dropping into that tone Southern women use when they're about to insult you and call it concern. Scott, I hope you don't mind me asking. Have you signed up for Medicaid yet? You know, just in case. Jenna's eyes snapped up, mortified. Mom? Meredith lifted a hand delicately. I'm just saying, darling, healthcare costs are no joke at that age. Especially when you don't have corporate insurance anymore. Pierce laughed. Oh, Meredith, don't worry. If Scott ever needs help, we could admit him under my hospital's community program. We have a separate billing line for lower-income patients. The room went silent, except for the clink of Avery's fork on porcelain. I smiled faintly, nodded. That's mighty generous of you, Doc. He raised his glass in mock humility. We like to give back. Avery, always the lawyer trying to smooth things over, chimed in. Let's not talk about money. Tonight's about family. But Meredith was already on a roll. Oh, money's part of family, Avery. It's what holds people together, or tears them apart. She turned to me again. Speaking of which, I suppose Jenna told you how much we helped with the wedding. I glanced at my daughter. She looked down. Meredith beamed pride glimmering in her eyes. We wanted it to be perfect, you know. So we gave them the down payment for their house, $80,000 just to get them started. Pierce nodded. And the honeymoon, $20,000 for 3 weeks in Santorini. Worth every penny. A good investment in their future. I said nothing. Avery added, and don't forget the premarital financial course. I handled the contracts myself. Helps them plan long-term, make smart joint decisions. It's all about building stability. Smart idea, I said quietly. Meredith tilted her head. Yes. And we advised them not to rush into children right away. Not when the economy's uncertain. You know how expensive kids are these days, don't you, Scott? Her words hit like stones wrapped in silk. I nodded slowly. I do, I said. But the funny thing about kids is no matter what they cost, they're the only thing that ever makes a man feel rich. For the first time that evening, Meredith's smile faltered. Pierce refilled his own glass, pretending not to hear. Jenna's eyes glistened with something between shame and sorrow. While they talked about Aspen ski trips and quarterly dividends, my mind drifted not away, but back. To a cold hospital room 6 years ago. Linda lying in that bed, tubes in her arms, pale, but still stubbornly beautiful. Her hand had been trembling when she said it. Promise me something, Scott. Promise me you'll never let anyone buy our daughter's heart. Not with money, not with guilt, not with anything. And I had promised. I'd held her hand until the monitors flatlined, and I'd sworn I'd protect Jenna even from herself if I had to. I came back to the table, to the gleam of their wine glasses and their expensive laughter. They didn't know it, but every word they said was just making the line clearer, the line between who they were and who I refused to be. Scott, Meredith said suddenly, you've been so quiet tonight. Are we boring you? Not at all, I said. I like listening to what Pierce asked. To people, I said. They tell you everything without realizing it. Avery's eyebrows lifted slightly. He caught the hint. Meredith didn't. She laughed. You really are a simple man, aren't you? I smiled. That's what they tell me. I checked my watch, 9:30. Long enough to see what I needed to see. I folded my napkin neatly beside my plate. Would anyone like dessert? Meredith raised an eyebrow. Dessert, yes, ma'am. I hear their peach cobbler's something special. Reminds me of home. I caught the waiter's eye. Excuse me, son, I said, my voice steady and warm. Would you mind calling Quinn for me? The manager. The waiter blinked, startled. Of course, sir. Right away. The room froze. Avery's smile wavered. Pierce's glass paused midair. Meredith looked at me, like I'd just spoken in another language. Quinn, she repeated slowly. Do you know the manager here? I didn't answer. I just leaned back in my chair, hands folded loosely, a small smile tugging at the corner of my mouth. Because what they didn't know was, yes, I knew Quinn. Better than any of them could imagine. And as the waiter disappeared through the door, I could almost feel Linda's voice in the back of my mind, calm and certain. That's right, Scott. Time to see who they really are. The door opened quietly, and in stepped Quinn. Pressed black vest, crisp white shirt. That same calm efficiency I'd seen the first time I came here months ago. Only this time he wasn't just a restaurant manager walking into a dining room. He smiled the kind of smile that meant something. Evening, everyone. Is there a problem with the service? Meredith straightened in her chair, already annoyed. No problem. We're just in the middle of a family discussion. Quinn turned his eyes toward me. Of course. I just came because... He hesitated, glancing around the table. Because Mr. Sterling Creek asked to see me. The name landed like a dropped glass. Meredith's fork froze halfway to her mouth. Pierce stopped swirling his wine. Quinn continued, his tone warm and respectful. Good to see you again, Mr. Scott. We received your letter last month about the maintenance contract. Everything's been resolved. And thank you again for the extension on the lease. It meant a lot to the staff. I smiled lightly, my voice even. Glad to hear it, son. You're doing a fine job here. Thank you, sir. Quinn gave a small nod, then glanced briefly at the others, before excusing himself. Enjoy your evening. When the door shut, silence settled like fog. Avery was the first to break it. Lease, he asked carefully. I sipped my water. Yes. The restaurant rents this space. Pierce frowned, from whom I looked him dead in the eye. From Sterling Creek Trust. It took Meredith 2 seconds to connect the dots. Her lipstick smile faltered, her eyes flicking toward Avery, then back to me. That's interesting, she said, her voice suddenly brittle. Coincidence, I suppose. Just an investment, Pierce added quickly, a laugh that sounded more like a cough. Everyone's got a few bonds here and there. Sure, I said quietly. Some people buy bonds. Some people buy the building the bonds are traded in. That one hit home. Meredith's jaw tightened. She picked up her glass and set it down again without drinking. Avery leaned forward, trying to smooth the air. Well, that certainly explains your composure, Scott. He chuckled softly. You've got a few cards up your sleeve. Not cards, I said. Just patience. Pierce cleared his throat. So you're telling us this Sterling Creek Trust, that's you? More or less, I said. Trustee, technically. Meredith laughed too loud, the sound brittle and forced. Well, isn't that something? How delightful. You really should have mentioned it earlier. We were all treating you like a guest when it turns out you were practically our landlord. Only for the walls, I said, not for the people inside. Avery's smile twitched. He pulled his phone from his jacket, tapping the screen like a man trying to regain control of the conversation. Well, he said lightly, this actually simplifies things. I just got a message from the Langford family banker. You'll appreciate this, Scott. He turned the phone to show me a text. Pending authorization. Trust restructuring package for Jenna Langford. Contingent upon paternal consent. Estimated value 1.3. He looked up. See nothing sinister. Just reallocating assets to secure Jenna's financial position. With your signature, we can finalize tonight. Keeps everyone comfortable. Everyone, I asked softly. Avery nodded. Of course. I turned to Jenna. What about you, sweetheart? You comfortable with this? That was when it broke. Whatever dam she'd been building all evening monthly gave way. Her voice came out small, trembling. No, Dad. I'm not. Meredith stiffened. Jenna. No, Mom. Jenna said louder this time. You don't get to talk for me. Her eyes filled and the words came rushing like floodwater. You think I don't see what you're doing? You've been controlling everything since the wedding. You tell me what to wear, what to eat, how to sit, how to speak. You even told me not to visit Dad more than once a week, because you said it looked common. Meredith's face hardened. Jenna, lower your voice. But she didn't. Her voice cracked open with years of swallowed pride. You called me soft. You told me I needed fillers before 30, so I'd keep Tyler's attention. You body shamed me for gaining 3 pounds after the honeymoon. You said if I ever acted too emotional in public, people would think I was unstable. Pierce shifted, embarrassed, but didn't speak. Avery watched, pretending to be invisible. Jenna turned to Tyler, her husband, his head down, shoulders tight. And you, she said through tears, you let them. You never once stood up for me. You said it's just how they are. Jenna, Tyler whispered, voice cracking. Please, no, she said, not tonight. The room felt smaller. The chandelier light was too bright, the wine too sweet. Meredith's mask finally cracked. She slammed her napkin down. You're ungrateful, Jenna. Everything you have, Your home, your security, your lifestyle. We paid for it. We built it. So yes, we make the rules. Because without us, you'd have nothing. Her words echoed in the room like the crack of a gun. I sat there quiet. I'd seen anger before, real anger, raw, human. But this was something else. This was ownership disguised as love. I took a long breath, then reached into my jacket pocket. The paper was folded once neat. I placed it gently in the center of the table. Avery glanced at it. "What's that?" "Something I meant to bring up," I said. "Just didn't think tonight would be the right time." "Until now." Pierce frowned. "What is it?" "Proof," I said. "Of who's really been paying for what." Meredith scoffed. "Excuse me." I slid the envelope toward her. "Open it." She hesitated, then did. Inside was a printed wire transfer confirmation, dated 6 months earlier. The sender, Hollow Bend Logistics LLC. The recipient, Langford Ventures LLC. Amount $120,000. Her hands shook as she scanned it. "What is this supposed to be?" "Bridge financing," I said softly. "To keep Tyler's company afloat last spring, when your supplier pulled out." "You remember that, right?" Pierce's jaw clenched. "How did you?" "Because," I said, leaning back. "Hollow Bend Logistics is one of mine. Just a quiet little LLC, under the Sterling Creek Trust. I didn't want Jenna or you to know at the time. Didn't want to embarrass anyone." Avery went pale. Tyler's face drained of color. So I said, calm as Sunday morning, "Before we talk about who pays for whose life, maybe we clear that up first." Silence. No clinking glasses, no fake laughter now, just the sound of Meredith's breathing, sharp and uneven. I looked around the table one by one, then said almost kindly, "Seems to me, folks, tonight's the right time to get a few things straight." No one moved for a long while. You could feel the truth settling across the table like a cold fog, quiet, heavy, impossible to ignore. Tyler finally broke the silence, his voice dry. "Wait. The transfer. That was you." I nodded. "Through one of my companies, Red Oak College LLC. Pierce frowned. "Never heard of it." "You wouldn't have," I said. "It's a logistics outfit down near Houston. I've been a silent partner for years. Sometimes when folks need help keeping the lights on, I make bridge loans." Tyler's lips parted, the color draining from his face. "That $250,000, that was." "You?" "Yep," I said softly. "Your venture deal was stuck in review. Your investors were about to walk. You'd have gone under by May." He stared at me, stunned. "I thought that money came from a firm in Fort Worth." I nodded once. "It did. Through a fund I control. I never said a word because I wanted you to stand on your own feet, not owe me anything. But I did it for one reason." I turned toward Jenna, my voice lowering. "So you wouldn't have to watch your husband fail. So your name wouldn't be dragged through it. I didn't do it for thanks. I didn't do it to show off. I did it because your mother would have done the same." Meredith's face went white. "That's unbelievable." "No," I said quietly. "It's just inconvenient." Pierce leaned forward, his voice clipped. "Why keep it secret? Why the games?" "No game," I said. "Just a choice. See, real help doesn't come with strings. You of all people should know that, doctor." Meredith bristled, her manicured hand gripping the stem of her glass. "You think you can buy moral ground with a loan? You think money gives you the right to—" I cut her off gently. "I'm not buying anything. I'm proving something. That respect doesn't come from what you spend. It comes from how you treat people." Avery cleared his throat, his lawyer instincts kicking in. "Let's stay rational, folks. Emotions are high. Scott, with all due respect, what you've described, financing your son-in-law's business, quietly could be interpreted as financial entanglement." "Entanglement," I said. "That's creative." He smirked faintly. The law doesn't love situations where one party uses money to influence another's marriage. It could be construed as interference. I could file a petition for a protective order tomorrow if it looks like undue pressure. Jenna gasped. Protective order against my father, Avery shrugged. Only a draft. Hypothetical, of course. We'd rather avoid that kind of mess. Tyler stared at him horrified. Avery, what the hell are you doing? Meredith's voice was ice. He's doing his job. Pierce nodded once, all in professional. Avery's protecting the family from exposure. We can't have exposure, I repeated. You mean the truth? Avery smiled, the kind of smile that means trouble. Look, Scott, no one's accusing you of anything. But you did just admit to transferring funds without disclosure to a relative's company, under a different LLC. That's legally gray, to say the least. If you push too hard, we'll have to document it properly. I leaned back, calm, as a man holding lightning in his palm. You want to talk documentation? Good. I reached into my pocket and laid my phone on the table. The red dot on the recording app blinked quietly. Been recording since the moment you handed me that file, I said evenly. Texas is a one-party consent state. Perfectly legal. So if we're playing the gray area game, I'd say I've got a full record of elder financial coercion, since you're the ones trying to force a man over C60 to sign away his rights in exchange for a $600 stipend. The blood drained from Avery's face. Meredith blinked rapidly, words caught in her throat. Pierce shifted back, slowly calculating. You wouldn't, Avery murmured. I looked him dead in the eye. And I've been wiring houses longer than you've been writing contracts. You think I don't know when current's running dirty, silence, heavy, awkward, the kind that tastes metallic. Meredith finally spoke, her voice thin. This is ridiculous. We're just trying to help. No, I said. You're trying to control. There's a difference. Jenna wiped her tears quietly. Tyler couldn't even look at his parents. Then soft footsteps. The waiter reappeared, leaning close to Quinn, who'd been watching from the doorway. Their whispers carried just enough to reach us. Quinn nodded slowly and approached. Dr. Langford. Pierce turned sharply. Yes, the waiter held a small black leather folder. I'm sorry, sir. Your card was declined. The system flagged an unusual hold. Pierce blinked. That's impossible. Run it again. We did, twice. Meredith's hand tightened around her wineglass so hard the stem gave a faint crack. The rim splintered under her grip, a sharp white line running through the crystal. Quinn's voice was respectful, neutral. Perhaps you'd like to call your bank, sir. Pierce said nothing. Meredith's knuckles were white. The air felt brittle, as if one more word might make everything shatter. I leaned forward, voice low. You see, the thing about money is, it tells the truth faster than people do. Meredith's eyes darted toward me, her mouth opening, but no words came. For the first time all night, I didn't hide the calm satisfaction in my voice. Looks like it's not just my finances on the table tonight. No one replied. Only the sound of that cracked glass, creaking softly under the pressure of her grip, filled the room. The air had that strange stillness that comes right before a storm breaks, a silence full of ticking nerves and slow breaths. You could hear the faint clink of a spoon from another room, the hum of a wine cooler, the steady pulse of panic under all that polished calm. Pierce was the first to crack. There's some mistake, he muttered, pulling his phone from his pocket. His voice sharpened as he punched in numbers. It's just a technical issue. He turned away, walking toward the wall of glass that overlooked the city, and barked into the phone. Yes, this is Dr. Langford. I'm at La Maison d'Étoile. My card was declined. I need to know why my account's on hold. There was a pause. Then his voice rose half an octave. What do you mean? Temporary freeze. That's not possible. This is absurd. I have a surgery scheduled tomorrow. Across the table, Avery's phone buzzed a long, urgent vibration. He glanced down the glow of the screen, washing his face. Pale. He muttered something under his breath, scrolled, then frosties. "Oh, hell," he whispered. Meredith caught it. "What is it?" He didn't answer right away, just kept reading, his lips pressed tight. Then he exhaled slowly, rubbing a hand across his forehead. "Dr. Langford," he said carefully, "you might want to check your inbox. There's been a development." Pierce turned from the window, phone still in his hand. "What development?" Avery hesitated, then showed him the screen. "Your medical practice. The insurer flagged irregular billing patterns. There's a civil inquiry, temporary court order to review transactions. Some of your accounts are under hold pending clarification." The color drained from Pierce's face. "That's insane. We've done nothing wrong." Avery kept his voice low but firm. "It's probably routine. But until they clear it, any card linked to those accounts is frozen." Meredith looked between them, her perfect composure cracking like thin ice. "Pierce, tell me you can fix this." He started, but his voice faltered. "I'll call Tom in the morning." "No," she snapped, panic breaking through the surface. "Call him now." Across the table, Quinn stood quietly with the waiter beside him. His posture was impeccable, his tone polite but professional. "Dr. Langford." "Mrs. Langford," he said softly. "I completely understand these things happen. For tonight, though, if you'd like to settle the bill, we can take cash or a different card." Meredith blinked fast, her hands trembling as she reached into her purse. Yes, of course. Just a moment." She pulled out another card, black with a gold crest, and handed it to the waiter. The young man hesitated, glanced at Quinn. Quinn gave a subtle nod, but his eyes shifted toward me for a fraction of a second, something respectful, knowing. I sat there quiet, watching the whole scene like a man watching a fire burn itself out. "Try that one," Meredith said sharply, her voice brittle. The waiter took it, disappeared toward the door. Nobody spoke for a full 30 seconds. You could almost hear everyone's thoughts tripping over themselves. Jenna's hand was trembling in her lap. Tyler sat stiffly, jaw tight, eyes darting between his parents and me. Finally, Meredith exhaled. "This is ridiculous. The bank will fix it. We'll settle it tomorrow." I smiled a little, calm as a slow river. "No need to wait." Meredith blinked. "Excuse me." I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out my wallet. From it, I slid out a card, metallic gray, the kind that catches light without needing to show off. Titanium. Heavy enough to feel real. The engraving read, "Sterling Creek Trust." I set it on the table gently, like a stone placed on a grave. "Let me," I said. "Tonight's on me." Pierce's head jerked toward me. "That's not necessary." I smiled. "Family dinner, right? Family helps family." Meredith's mouth opened, then closed again. Her eyes went to the card, then to me, as if seeing me for the first time. "This isn't," she started, then stopped. Her fingers twitched near her wine glass. I just looked at her steady. "You've paid for a lot of things in your life, Meredith. Houses, vacations, weddings. But dignity." I tilted my head slightly. "That one's on me tonight." Jenna broke first. Her tears came all at once, quiet, shaking, years of pressure bleeding out through her fingertips as she reached for my hand. "Dad," she whispered. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I squeezed her hand gently. "Nothing to be sorry for, sweetheart." Across from me, Tyler looked at his wife, shame, and something else maybe awakening, written across his face. He turned toward his mother. "Mom, stop." "Stop what?" she snapped. "Everything," he said, voice trembling but firm. "Stop trying to control everything. Stop treating him like dirt." Stop acting like money makes you better than everyone else. Meredith froze eyes wide, as if the word mom itself had turned on her. Avery cleared his throat, softly breaking the moment. Scott, he said, his tone cautious now. What do you plan to do with that recording of yours? I turned to him slowly. Tomorrow morning, I said, I'm sending a copy to my lawyer. And if the Langfords keep pushing this coercion, this whole mess with the contracts, I'll forward it to the Attorney General's office. Avery's professional mask slipped for the first time. That won't be necessary. I held up a hand. I don't want to fight, son. I've had enough of those in my life. I'd rather handle it like family, quietly, respectfully. I leaned forward, lowering my voice until it was almost gentle. But make no mistake, if this family thinks they can bully a 60-year-old man into signing his dignity away for $600 a month, I'll drag the whole thing into daylight. Silence again. The waiter returned, whispering something to Quinn, who gave a single nod and stepped closer. Dr. Langford, he said carefully, the second card didn't go through either. We'll hold the check until tomorrow if that's easier. Meredith's hand went rigid around her wine glass. You could see the tendons flex under her skin. Then crack. The stem splintered clean in two, the sound sharp and final. A drop of red wine spilled onto the white linen like a wound. Pierce reached for her wrist, murmuring something, but she pulled away. I slid my card across the table, calm as ever. No need for delay. Let's keep it simple. Quinn took it with both hands, nodded. Of course, Mr. Scott. For a moment, no one breathed. Then I looked straight at Meredith, steady, quiet, not unkind. You know, I said softly, there's still a way to end this with grace. Her jaw clenched. And what would that be? I smiled faintly, leaning back. You could make a decent agreement. One built on respect instead of fear. She stared at me, eyes wet and furious. A decent agreement, she repeated. That's right, I said. A thoathwan tute. Between people who've done enough harm for one night. The words hung there, soft but heavy. The chandelier above us trembled slightly in the air conditioning, scattering broken light across the table. For the first time since the evening began, the Langfords had nothing left to say. Meredith sat upright, her wineglass trembling in her hand, the cracked stem glinting under the light, like a threat. The room was heavy with silence, the kind that hums right before something breaks. I looked at each of them, slow and steady, my voice calm, measured, the tone of a man who's been quiet for far too long. This, I said, is my decent agreement. Avery blinked. Meredith frowned. Pierce stopped mid-sentence, his phone still pressed to his ear. I continued, my tone even but firm. First, all that nonsense about conditional support ends tonight. No more monthly stipends in exchange for keeping distance. No more paperwork, turning a father into a burden that needs managing. Those offers are void. Meredith's mouth tightened. You're dictating terms to me now, no, I said softly. I'm teaching you about boundaries. I leaned back in my chair, folding my hand calmly. Second, from now on, Jenna and Tyler live their lives as they please. No more control. No more body shaming. No more etiquette lessons disguised as humiliation. If I hear one more word about social presentation or appropriate appearances, I'll make sure you understand what real loss feels like. Meredith froze. Tyler lowered his head. Jenna's shoulders trembled, a tear sliding down her cheek. Third, I said, turning to Avery, any and all legal documents involving Jenna, her finances, her marriage, her rights, must be reviewed by an independent attorney. She chooses herself. No more Cole and Langford oversight. No more conflict of interest, dressed as family advice. Avery tried to smile, but his voice cracked slightly. Scott, with respect, I think you are misreading the intent here. This was all standard procedure, family protection clauses. I cut him off. Protection, I said quietly, is something good people offer. Control is what frightened people do. I pulled my phone from my jacket and pressed play. My voice came through the speaker recorded earlier that evening. You sign tonight, and I'll tear up the stipend clause. We're family after all. Avery went pale. I stopped the playback. That's what coercion sounds like, I said. And if I want, the Attorney General can hear it too. But I'm still hoping this family remembers what shame feels like. No one spoke. I took a breath, then delivered the last term. Fourth, if any of you try again to force a signature, slander me, or pressure Jenna, I'll end every financial bridge between our families. Meredith gave a sharp laugh. Financial bridge? What could you possibly? I slipped a paper from my inside pocket. A copy of the Langford Aesthetic Clinic, Plano Branch lease. I laid it flat on the table and pointed to a paragraph in fine print. Section 4T, Conduct and Morals Clause. Landlord reserves the right to terminate this lease in the event of unethical, derogatory, or harmful behavior by tenant or its representatives toward any parties associated with the Sterling Creek Trust. Pierce's face drained of color as he read. This can't be. It's there, I said evenly. I added it when you renewed the lease last year. Guess you didn't read the supplemental rider. Meredith shot to her feet, fury trembling in her voice. This is blackmail. I looked at her, calm, unflinching. No, Meredith. This is a boundary. I don't want your money. I've got more than enough. I just want my daughter to be treated like a human being, not a social investment. Her laugh was sharp, brittle. You think you can lecture me on decency? You think a man who hides behind fake humility can shame us into respect? You'll never understand our world, old man. I understand it perfectly, I said quietly. I just chose not to live in it. The silence that followed was raw, electric. Then Tyler spoke. Enough. His voice was low but firm, the kind that carried weight, because it came from someone who'd been silent too long. Mom, he said, looking right at her. He's right. You both know he's right. I'm sick of watching Jenna shrink around you. I'm tired of living by your checklist of who we should be. And I'm done pretending this control is love. Tyler, Meredith snapped. No, he said louder this time. Listen, you owe them both an apology. For once in your life, just say it. Jenna was crying openly now. Pierce stared at the table. Avery looked like he wanted to disappear. Meredith glared at her son, disbelief flashing in her eyes. Apologize, she spat. Then she gave a sharp, brittle laugh. You want me to apologize to a man who deceived us, who strutted in here to humiliate us? Her breath trembled. Fine, she said coldly. You want an apology? She pushed her chair back violently, the legs screeching across the floor. Then you'll get one right out there. Everyone froze. She straightened, her dress eyes glinting with venom. If this man wants decency, she said, voice shaking with rage, let's give him a public apology. And before anyone could speak, she threw the door open. Light spilled in the bright, polished glow of the restaurant's main hall. Jazz music. Glasses clinking. The chatter of Dallas's elite. And at the far end, Flash's photographers gathered around a wine display, snapping shots of the Langford family charity wine night. A banner hung behind them, glittering under spotlights. Meredith turned back to me, her lipstick cracking as she smiled that razor-thin smile. You want a decent agreement, she hissed. Then let's see how decent you look under a spotlight. And with that, she stepped out into the flashing lights. The doors opened wide, and the sound hit me first, laughter, jazz glasses, clinking, the soft chatter of people who believed they were untouchable. The chandeliers threw light like broken diamonds across the marble floor. And in the middle of it all stood Meredith Langford. Chin high, smile sharp, the queen of a stage, she thought, was hers alone. The cameras found her instantly. A photographer called her name. Another one shouted, "Mrs. Langford, over here." She turned slightly the way people trained for attention always do, and in that poised voice of hers said, "Oh, you're just in time." We were about to make a small family announcement, but I didn't let her finish. I stepped forward slow and steady, the way I used to approach a live wire, not out of fear, but respect for what electricity can do when it's mishandled. "Excuse me," I said calmly, my voice carrying further than I expected. The crowd turned curious. Meredith froze mid-smile, her eyes flicking toward me like a blade. I gave her a small nod, then faced the journalists. "You'll have to forgive us," I said. "Family dinners can be messy." A few of them chuckled politely. One young reporter, maybe 25, leaned forward, recorder in hand. "Sir, you're—" "My name's Scott Bennett," I said. "I'm nobody special. Just a man who worked with his hands for 35 years wiring homes and fixing what breaks." The cameras found me then. Meredith's painted smile twitched. I kept my tone even, plain, like I was telling the truth to an old friend. I was a master electrician down in Dallas. Not a doctor, not a lawyer, just a guy who made sure other people's lights stayed on. I've worked in storms, in crawl spaces, in houses that had more rats than outlets. I once saved a small factory from burning down because I caught a shorted panel at 2 in the morning. They gave me a plaque for that. I keep it in a drawer. A few chuckles. Someone murmured, "Blue-collar hero." I smiled faintly. I'm not a hero. I just did my job. Then I came home to my wife, God rest her, and later I came home to my daughter. I changed diapers, paid bills, sat through chemo treatments, holding her mother's hand until she couldn't hold mine anymore. I didn't inherit anything. Every dollar I ever had smelled like wire dust and burnt insulation. The crowd went quiet. Even the cameras seemed to blink slower. I went on gentle. "See, I didn't come here tonight as a businessman or a trust fund. I came here as a father. Just a father meeting his daughter's new family." And somewhere along the way, that simple thing turned into a negotiation. A hush spread across the hall, the kind that comes when people realize the script's changed. "I didn't want to impress anyone," I said. "I didn't want a handout, or an apology dinner, or a spotlight. I just wanted one thing." I paused, looking around at all those rich, glossy faces. Respect. For a long second, no one spoke. Then somewhere near the bar, a man clapped. Just once. Then another. Then another. It wasn't a roar. It was quieter, slower, like something being understood rather than performed. Pierce Langford stood frozen at the edge of the crowd, his phone still in his hand, eyes darting from me to the cameras. Avery Ever, the lawyer, tried to edge Meredith away from the lights, whispering something urgent. She resisted for a moment, then saw how the crowd was looking at me. Not at her. At me. Her face cracked. She took a half step back, her heel clicking sharply on the marble floor. Quinn appeared at my side, calm as ever, his voice smooth as silk. "Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the wine presentation. Let's allow the family a moment of privacy." He gestured subtly, his staff guiding the photographers toward the exit with polite firmness. "Drinks on the house for the next half hour. Compliments of the Sterling Creek Trust." A ripple of approval, a few murmured thanks, and just like that, the focus shifted. The crowd turned back to their glasses, their laughter, their safety. Quinn caught my eye and gave me a nod, professional, but full of quiet respect. When the flashes dimmed, Jenna came to me. Her face was streaked with tears, her voice small, but steady. "Dad," she took my hand. "I'm done. I'm going home with you tonight." I blinked, a lump rising in my throat. "You sure about that?" She nodded. "I'm sure. I don't care what they think anymore." Behind her, Tyler stepped forward. His tie was undone, his shoulders no longer stiff with pustoy. I'm with her, he said quietly. Then louder. We're moving out of the condo tomorrow. We'll start fresh on my salary. It's time. Meredith gasped like he'd struck her. Tyler, you can't just... He turned to her eyes full of something new backbone to bone. We can. And we will. You raised me to think independence was strength, Mom. So I'm finally showing you what that looks like. Pierce said nothing. He just looked tired. Avery stared at the floor, lips pressed shut. And for the first time in months, maybe years, I saw my daughter breathe freely. She turned back to me, smiling through her tears. Let's go home, Dad. I smiled back, tried to stand straight. Yeah, I said softly. Let's go. But as we turned toward the exit, something in beneath me twisted a deep, dull ache that had been whispering for months. I pressed my hand to my abdomen, trying to hide the tremor. A cough tore out of me, small but sharp enough to make Jenna stop. Dad, she said, her voice suddenly tight. I forced a smile, swallowed the pain. I'm fine, sweetheart. Just dry throat. She frowned, watching me too closely. You're lying. I tried to laugh, but it came out thin. Her voice broke. Dad, what are you hiding from me? I looked at her, her mother's eyes full of the same fierce love, the same fear, and for the first time all night, I had no words left. Jenna's question hung between us, like smoke that wouldn't clear. What are you hiding from me, Dad? I took a slow breath. There was no point keeping it anymore. The fight was over. The masks had done their job. All that was left was the truth, the kind that strips you bare, but somehow makes you lighter. I smiled faintly. You remember the checkups I kept putting off last year? Jenna's eyes widened. Yeah. I nodded. Well, I finally went. They found something. Prostate cancer. Early stage. Her hand flew to her mouth. Tyler froze behind her. I kept my tone steady, almost casual, the way old men talk about weather, to keep the sky from falling. It's treatable. I've been in therapy for a few months now. Doing all right, just tired sometimes. Jenna shook her head. Why didn't you tell me? I reached out, cupped her face. Because I didn't want pity. I didn't want anyone using it to measure how much love I deserve. I've seen too many people let illness turn them into leverage. I swallowed. I wanted to stand on my own 2 feet one last time. Her tears came fast, the kind that come from a mix of love and anger. You shouldn't have gone through this alone. I smiled gently. Sweetheart, I wasn't alone. I had your mother's voice in my head, nagging me about my diet every morning. That made her laugh through her tears. It was the kind of laugh that heals something inside you. Then suddenly, she wrapped her arms around me. Tight. Like she was holding on to a lifetime. Tyler stepped closer, joining us, his hand on my shoulder. And for a long moment, just 3 people standing in the middle of a fancy restaurant lobby. Nothing else mattered. Not the cameras, not the money, not the shame. Just family. Behind us, I heard quiet footsteps. Meredith. When I turned, she wasn't the woman from the wine posters anymore. Her face was streaked with mascara, her posture broken by something far heavier than pride. She looked at her son, then at me. I was wrong, she whispered. All of it. I spent my whole life terrified of going back to where I came from. We were poor, Scott. Dirt poor. I watched my parents lose everything because they didn't have control. So I promised myself I'd never be powerless again. But all I did was trade poverty for fear. Her voice cracked. I heard everyone around me trying to hold on too tight. Pierce came up behind her, his hand trembling slightly as he placed it on her back. She's right, he said quietly. We forgot what mattered. I forgot. Avery stood off to the side, pale and humbled, his professional armor gone. He cleared his throat, voice low. Mr. Bennett. I'll personally withdraw every document tied to that so-called post-nup, and I'll draft new ones if you allow it, that actually protect Jenna, not control her. No more clauses, no more traps. I studied him for a moment. The young man's hands were shaking, maybe from guilt, maybe from shame. But he meant it. Good, I said softly. Everyone deserves one clean start. Meredith wiped her tears, her voice unsteady. Scott, can you forgive us? I looked at her for a long moment, really looked. The steel under the diamonds, the exhaustion under the makeup, the mother buried under the ambition. I already did, I said. You just didn't know it. Because revenge, the kind that matters, doesn't come from humiliation. It comes from truth. From walking out of a battlefield with your dignity intact, while the people who tried to break you have to live with what they did. That's the sweet revenge no one talks about. The kind soaked not in bitterness, but in peace. Quinn appeared quietly beside us. Everything's settled, Mr. Bennett, he said with that polite warmth only Texans can pull off. You still want me to run your card? Go ahead, I said. He nodded and took it. When he returned, I added a few extra bills to the receipt. 20%, I said. Your staff handled a war tonight with grace. That deserves respect. Quinn smiled. Thank you, sir. I reached out, shook his hand. And next time, I said, we'll grab that iced tea you promised me. My treat. He laughed softly. I'll hold you to that, Mr. Bennett. We left together, Jenna on one side, Tyler on the other. The doors of the restaurant swung open, and the Dallas night hit us with that warm southern breeze that smells faintly of asphalt and freedom. The city lights flickered across the windshield of my old Ford as we walked toward it. I could almost hear my wife's voice in the hum of traffic teasing me about driving that rust bucket forever. And for the first time in a long while, I felt proud. Not of the money, not of the deals, or the quiet power hidden in trust accounts. Proud that I'd stood up not as a rich man or a clever man, but as a man who didn't sell himself short. That's what people my age forget sometimes. We've carried the world so long, we start thinking we've got no right to stand tall anymore. But we do. Every wrinkle, every scar, every quote act of survival, they are proof we've earned our dignity. And dignity, my friends, is priceless. We stopped at the curb. Jenna squeezed my hand. You okay, Dad? I nodded. Yeah, better than okay. Then my phone buzzed in my pocket, an email notification. I opened it, squinting against the glow. Bank alert. A deposit has been received, 1,000. Source anonymous. Third-party transfer. I stared at it for a moment, my heart slowing into a quiet rhythm. Jenna looked at me. What is it? I smiled, small, knowing, tired. Maybe we don't have to fight this battle alone after all. I looked up at the Dallas sky, black velvet, dotted with city light, and whispered to the woman I still talk to in my head, looks like someone up there's still watching out for us, honey. Then I got in my old Ford, turned the key, and drove us home. You know, folks talk a lot about winning in life. But at my age, I've learned something simpler. Sometimes winning just means walking away with your head high. I didn't need to ruin anyway. Didn't need revenge with fire and fury. The sweetest kind of payback is peace. I'm not rich because of money. I'm rich because I kept my word, loved my family, and never let pride turn me cruel. So if you're watching this, and you've been made to feel small, stand up, speak calm, tell the truth, and let your dignity do the rest. This old man's still here, and for tonight, that's enough.